let me get to my Mythbusters page here because I don't want to miss anything. This is a carefully thought Mythbusters page. All right. So, first of all, palliative care does not equal do nothing. All right. People think, it's going to palliative care. You're just in a bed and, cleaned and you do nothing. And no, in fact, I'm not treating you as a part of a cascading slide of decision-making algorithm now. I'll chuck that. This is why I love doing what I'm doing, because every patient is very unique in their problems. And I just scratch my head going, okay, I like a challenge. I just say, how can I help you? Okay, I've got my training. I've got my evidence base. I've got this. How can I mix and match that to help you today?
That is so
today,
inspiring.
How can I, so it doesn't mean do nothing. It means it really the way I like to practice it anyway is it's really patient-centered care. It's what are your needs? And let's come up with a shared decision together. I'll come up with a few ideas. You tell me if they sit well with you or not. And I'll try and push these things that I really think are going to be, but if you don't want them, fine. But let's go to plan B, C, D, E, which might not be the best thing, but for you, as in general, but for you, in your case, okay, I can see how that can be the best thing for you. I'm being very general because I can't be specific because there's there's a million, billions of permutations of things that can happen.
Sorry, can I just quickly jump in? Part of my ignorance, but and this will show how very little I know, but how much I'm learning already, is patients only treated, no. Do they only get palliative care treatment when they're in the palliative care ward, or if they're called to a home?
Very good question. Very, very, very good question.
Yeah. Say someone's in ICU, for example.
Yes.
And then they're on their deathbed then.
Yes.
Is there a palliative care doctor there?
So, very, very good question. So, in the public system in Australia, and I'll talk about New South Wales health as well, but generally mirrored everywhere, we have our inpatient beds that we look. So, if they're in my unit, I'm the admitting officer. I'm the person I'm the senior doctor who's in charge of this person. Yep. The decisions are not always made through me, but are made on my behalf, or I'm involved in all those decisions. The other thing is we have a consult service, and generally that can be a lot bigger than our inpatient beds. So they can be under the care of intensive care, under the care of respiratory medicine, under the care of oncology or geriatricians or whichever. But we come in and we provide that extra layer of specialist care. Sometimes we say, look, we're providing this extra layer of care, and the patient's needs are spilling over to we're happy to take over care. If that model is there in the hospital. So not all hospitals have that model. Some hospitals just have a consulting model. So we go there, you look after the patient, but we'll help you look after the patient. We have community services as well, which are, again, doctors and nurses, which are terribly, terribly under-resourced and funded, which I've done a lot of training, and sometimes I have gone out to patients' homes and done home visits and managed them in the home. But generally they're under the care of the GP, because GPs own patients. This way sort of I constructed in my mind. GPs own patients in the community. That's their governance. With the GP will say, oh, you got a problem with your heart, I'll send you to a specialist. But the specialist writes a letter back to the GP saying, thank you for referring your patient. I recommend X, Y, Z. Follow up with me when necessary. But the GP owns the patient. So we as palliative care will own, so to speak, the patient when they're in our palliative care units. There aren't many of them around, and generally the bed numbers are not huge. So that's sort of the model of care that we work in.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And sorry.
So I've palliated many patients in ICU, in coronary care unit, in general wards, in subacute wards, home, nursing homes.
Okay. And sorry, follow up before we continue with the misconceptions. Right. Is this for every, progressively dying patient, or
we have to be referred these patients, so they have to be identified by their medical governing person. Could be a general practitioner, could be another specialist.
Yeah.
They will have to recognize, this person's got quite specialist end of life care needs, or has got nursing end of life care needs, and we need to sort of start to do a bit of advanced care planning. Okay. They might then refer. So I have no idea who's unwell to that degree in hospital. They have to be referred to me.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm that sort of that extra layer on top of what's going on already.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Palliative care, already said this, does not equal end of life care. So it's not synonymous, but we do end of life care. But then define end of life care. There are some people that will say end of life care is your last days, last minutes. There's a notion going out there that end of life care is your last, 1,000 days, which is like 3 years, which I think is a little bit long. But I think the tenet there is when things are slowing down, you might need to start be thinking about your end of life care management and everything. But it could be the last 6 months, 12 months. It's arbitrary. It's not a number. Palliative care doesn't equal cranking up morphine and other drugs. But we do it to appropriate it to a symptom. If there is a symptom need, if there is a problem, the next thing to do therapeutically would be possibly to increase this or increase that or add this on. That's just therapeutic. So, but a lot of people will see this person's dying, morphine goes up, person died. So therefore, palliative care equals increasing morphine till the person dies. That's what it looks like, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is should be happening, is proper assessment of the patient and addressing their needs, medical, nursing, and otherwise. That makes sense? Yeah. Palliative care is not synonymous with, let's just sedate them until they die. Sometimes I do actually put in medications there to reduce someone's consciousness or level of awareness if that's their distressing feature, or if they have what's called a terminal delirium or agitation or brain failure, which is really agitating them, and we need to calm that agitation down. So give some calming medications. And often what you see is you get rid of that agitation, and what you see is the natural history of what's going on, which is the progressive deterioration of the patient towards death. Very importantly, palliative care doesn't mean stopping all medications, stopping all interventions, stopping all investigations. It doesn't mean we don't do CAT scans or X-rays or we do what's appropriate. We do what's sensible if the goal of care is sensible. So I think that's sort of, I guess, in a nutshell, what palliative care is. And my last thing here is palliative care does not equal voluntary assisted dying. That's in the legislation as well. It's quite sort of clear that palliative care should be offered as part of a suite of options along with voluntary assisted dying. So it's not part of it. And certainly voluntary assisted dying in this state and in other states is not part of the palliative care discipline or service as well in terms of public money and public service. Yeah. Okay. There might be individual clinicians that will say, even if they're palliative care physicians, they might prescribe to this and say, well, no, I do agree this for individual, but they might be, I guess, acting in the case of, representing themselves rather than the whole discipline.
Okay. Can we shift gears here now?
Let's do it.
And let's talk about this euthanasia legislation that's been enacted. But before we do, I've got the Catechism of the Catholic Church here, and I'd just like to speak to a couple of paragraphs which might help us understand why the church teaches what it does, and then maybe we can extrapolate a little bit on those things. So paragraph 2276 says, those whose lives are diminished or weakened deserve special respect. Sick or handicapped persons should be helped to lead lives as normal as possible. The following paragraph says, whatever its motives and means, direct euthanasia consists in putting an end to the lives of handicapped, sick or dying persons. It is morally unacceptable. So just as a Catholic priest, I'm doing anointings all the time. I'm with people from beginning of life to end. And I just need to reaffirm exactly what the church teaches in this situation. Not to be in any way, mean, or to be a person that's showing no empathy for what's going on in the world, because people suffer, they do. But it is a very clear teaching in our church that euthanasia is morally unacceptable. So whilst it might be a law in New South Wales, for us as Catholics, there can be no consideration for this. We cannot encourage our loved ones to participate in it. We can't write it into wills. We can't do anything along those lines, because what we're about to start to investigate here is that ultimately, whilst the government might say, yes, it's okay, for us, God is the author of life. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Don't be afraid to go against the grain and click on some of these videos to my right or left. Like, subscribe, comment and follow on all the socials, and we'll see you next time.